Alright, so to start off this presentation, the title of my article was Skiing and Being Swedish, Taking a Cold Look at Winter Picture Books. So originally this article stood out to me because Sweden is a country that I have a lot of fascination towards. I would love to visit there, kind of learn more about the country as well. And I've always seen these beautiful pictures of Sweden's landscape, like the snowy mountains. It's kind of drawn me to this country, and I figured that this article would be a great resource in starting to educate myself in Sweden's culture while also looking at it through a kind of children's literature perspective. And so to give a summary of the article, the author's main idea was mainly to compare the cultural significance and the landscape of Sweden with skiing. So Sundmark discusses the different reasons people in Sweden utilize skiing. He kind of breaks down these into 4 different categories. These categories being heroic national, competitive, recreational, and just the everyday skiing. So today in Sweden, skiing is a popular sport, primarily a vernacular sport over an institutional sport. And it's mainly used for fun and exercise, as well as like competitive. So you have the competitions like the Olympics and different competitions that are Sweden based. However, skiing in Sweden used to be primarily a necessary survival skill. So with snow covering the ground for most of the year, people were required to use skiing as the main mode of transportation. Skiing also benefited the stabilization and establishment of communities as well as their economies. So the author even says that skiers were admired in Sweden for bringing up these communities and keeping them thriving. So this kind of fits in with the everyday use of skiing. And then with that being said, skiing holds many cultural and historical significance as well. So in terms of survival and establishment, like mentioned earlier, but he also makes the comment that skiing is expressed in terms of being. So many residents of Sweden view skiing as tradition and is important for self-identity. So this kind of brings in that cultural significance of skiing, as well as embodying the heroic national side, considering that many of Sweden's heroes were skiers. And it's seen as a very nationalistic form of representation. So the author also utilizes several children's picture books, one word, to support his claims of the connection between Sweden and skiing. So the primary texts he uses are in Swedish, and I'm not going to try to pronounce them because I don't know how to speak Swedish, but he did list them in English, so I will list off those. They start with Ali's Ski Trip, which he claims to be one of the most famous Swedish picture books to date. There's also Gustav Vasa's Adventures in the County of Dalarna, The Winter Journey of the Hedenås Children, and Moominlid Midwinter. These are just some of the picture books and sources that he uses throughout this. And so while I was reading this article, something that really grabbed my attention related to our class was the description of the picture book Ali's Ski Trip that kind of matched up with The Green Glass Sea, the one we read in class. So a little bit of background on Ali's Ski Trip. The author kind of describes the story as Ali gets a pair of skis for his birthday and decides to go skiing, and while he's out, he meets Old Man Frost, who takes him to the Winter King. And once they arrive at the Winter King's palace, the king takes a liking to Ali and allows him to roam the castle. So Ali runs into Sami men and women who, again, bring in that cultural aspect of Sweden within the picture book. And they are making ski shoes and socks. And he also runs into children who are making mittens, skis, and sleighs. They're preparing for the Christmas season. Since skiing is such a big part in Sweden, getting skis and skiing gear is a big part of the Christmas season and Christmas gifts. And then during a break, during the workers' break, Ollie plays many winter sports and games with them, which include downhill skiing, so bringing in that skiing aspect once again. And at the end, Old Man Frost takes Ollie home, and it kind of ends with Ollie playing with his brother with his skis until the springtime comes. And so this story, the timeline, like the storyline, I feel like really matches up with the Green Glass Sea. So it kind of starts off with Dewey being taken to Los Alamos, which is the top secret location, to be with her father, who's working on the top secret government project, the atomic bomb. Kind of similarly, Ollie is taken to the Winter King's palace, this unknown location, only he's there. And so they get to both get to explore within the limits, which again kind of crosses paths with that. Dewey and Ollie are both kind of alone for a good while. Dewey does end up making friends, and Ollie ends up playing with the people in the kingdom. But what kind of got me was, even though the cultural aspects don't entirely light up, I feel that these two stories have very similar place settings. So that kind of remote location, they're boarded off. There's very specific details about each place-based setting. So that kind of grabbed my attention, as well as kind of the storylines match up in ways. And so kind of taking a turn, kind of analyzing the article a little more, I felt that in the introduction, the author really grabs the attention of the reader by saying that they're taking you on a cross-country trip, while also introducing cross-country skiing, so that kind of that play on words hooks the reader. Within the first paragraph, the author clearly states what the article is going to be about, brings up Sweden, the importance of skiing, as well as how it relates to Swedish children's picture books. So right off the bat, it states what the rest of the article is going to be about. It paints that clear picture, and I know it hooked me. I was very excited to read it after the first few paragraphs. And then one thing that I really liked about the article, like the introduction of the article, was that the author gave a lot of background on the Swedish culture, as well as skiing and the history of skiing and how it relates to Sweden. Coming from somebody who doesn't know a lot about the country or skiing, it was very nice to have these clear set historical, cultural significance, as well as kind of defining some of the terms that are used in skiing. It helped me understand this article on a deeper level, and some of the primary sources that the author uses, again, is the picture books, like mentioned earlier, Ollie's Ski Adventure, Moominland, Moominland, Midwinter, The Winter Journey, The Adeno's Children. He also kind of uses quotes from people who were important skiers. So there's a lot of primary sources that he uses, which I feel like, going into his credibility, makes him a very credible source. Also, one of the first things I noticed was his name, Bjorn Sundmark, I'm pretty sure. It's definitely not English, so I looked it up, and he is from Sweden. So that kind of, I feel like, establishes his credibility. He grew up with Sweden's culture. He also knows the history of skiing, knows the importance of skiing to Sweden. So I think between both of those things, it establishes his credibility. And to kind of wrap up the article as a whole, I feel like he did a great job highlighting the main points within the article in his conclusion. So Sundmark includes the overall importance of skiing On Sweden, once again, he brings up the point of skiing being a popular motif, especially within the last few decades. He states that you can find skiing images almost anywhere. He lists, like, of course, picture books, Christmas cards, national symbols. So it has become a very popular motif within Sweden. I felt like that was just a really good way to conclude the article, because it kind of reestablishes his point that skiing holds this great importance to the country of Sweden and its residents, and it kind of establishes that point of why so many Swedish picture books contain skiing. It's such this popular place-based item, and it helps establish Sweden's cultural and place-based significance. And throughout the entire article, I feel like the writer's voice weighed more on the informal side, kind of starting off in the beginning. He uses that play on words, the cross-country, like across the globe to Sweden, as well as the cross-country sport of skiing. And there's also kind of funnier quotes that are used. I feel like his tone is definitely more informal than on the formal side. So overall, I felt like this article was pretty easy to read. For the most part, it used common language. Wasn't really second guessing on what I was reading. It used a lot of language that most people could understand. One challenge that I did have while reading is that I could not read the Swedish titles. So I don't know Swedish. I don't understand it. I can't read it. So that was definitely one of the issues that I ran into. But I really liked how after the Swedish title, he included in parentheses the English translation to those. So that definitely helped me understand it even more. I really liked that touch that he added. And then another challenge I had was complexly understanding the information on Sweden and skiing. So like I said earlier, before reading this article, I didn't really have much background on Sweden or skiing. So many of like the skiing terms that he used, I had to look up. And afterwards, I was able to understand it better. I had to reread multiple parts sometimes to kind of get that clear definition in order to understand the overall meaning of the article better. And as I was reading, I did have 2 questions that I would like to ask the author. So the first one was that I understand that skiing is a big part of the Swedish culture, but I kind of wonder if there is another activity or subject that could be equivalent to skiing. This could be like snowboarding or a different kind of activity, anything like that. And if so, could the author have used that activity instead of skiing, while also giving the article that same place-based importance. So obviously skiing plays a big part in the Swedish and establishing that place-based setting. So I wonder if there's another activity or subject that could replace skiing to also give it that same kind of equivalent importance. And then another question that I had was that the author used many picture books to back up his reasoning. I kind of wonder if there was more picture books, if there's like current ones or older ones that could also work, or if there are even early readers and easy readers that the author could have used to also give that same effect. So yeah, skiing and being Swedish, taking a cold look at winter picture books.